Streamlining your digital life, the action first approach. That's what we're talking about today. Hi, this is Frank Buck, and this is the place to be if you want to get organized and make it look easy. The principle that has guided my digital organization for over 20 years can be summed up in one sentence. Things start as action and move to reference. This approach transformed how I handled email when I was using Outlook for my calendar, tasks, contacts, notes, and communication. When opening an email, I made immediate decisions about what that email meant to me. My goal? Touch each email just once. Now, this didn't mean that I had to complete every action right away. I simply needed to decide what action would needed to be taken and then move the email to the appropriate place. If an email required me to visit a website, call someone, or research something, I determined exactly what needed to be done and when. What was the action? When did I want to see that task again? Then I could delete or archive the email and keep moving. The aim was to reach inbox zero. In other words, a decision made about each email, and then that email moved to where it needed to go. Often, emails contain both action items and reference information. That's where the start as action and move to reference principle really came in handy. In Outlook, I dragged the email to the task button and change the subject line to clearly name the task, exactly what was the action to be taken. Since the entire body of that email appeared in the task notes section, I could add details, I could remove unnecessary information, and then save that task. And then later, when working through my task list, I'd see those items, and there were the meaningful descriptions in the note section of those tasks. I could archive, delete the email, touch it once, I'm done with it. So, what then? Let's say I'd taken the action. I made the phone call. I researched. I did whatever the task said, and I could simply check off the item as completed. But if that task contained valuable information, say maybe for documentation or reference, I'd apply that principle again. I drag the task to the note icon in Outlook to create a new note, modify it as needed, and save it. Many Outlook users never discovered this simple workflow of turning emails into tasks. Now, if you use Outlook now, the new version of Outlook, the process has changed slightly. Look for the My Day icon when viewing your emails. It's sort of in the upper right corner. You turn that on, and it allows you to drag and drop emails and make them either calendar events or tasks. Now, one drawback of this current version is that you can't edit the task at creation the way you could with the old Outlook. You'll need to just drag it over and then go back to your task list later and modify that subject line so that it reflects what needs to be done and then add a date. Now, personally, I don't use Outlook anymore. I use Remember the Milk for my task, but the concept remains the same. Handle things as action first, and then it moves to reference. Here are two ways that you can do that in Remember the Milk. First is the generic method that works with most any web-based task list. You forward the email to Remember the Milk using a special email address that you have saved in your contacts. When forwarding, simply change the subject line to reflect what the task is going to be before you send it. And with Remember the Milk, you can add some special symbols right there in the subject line. For example, a caret plus a date is going to define the due date. An exclamation point followed by the numbers either 1, 2, 3, or 4 specifies the priority level. And if you use a hashtag, then you can add a tag. You can simply define the tags that you want to have, and type the hashtag, start typing the name of the tag, and after a couple of letters, it's going to just pop up before you hit enter. The entire email body becomes a note in that task. And so you now either archive or delete the original email. After completing the task, just you mark it as done. But if you need some information from that note section for good reference information for later, maybe this task was part of a large project and you want to keep up with all of that information for posterity, then you can you can search the completed task, but for that important reference information, you can copy and paste it, say into Evernote, or you can use the print to PDF. You'll see a little printer icon inside that task when you open it up and remember the milk. You can click that and say print to PDF, and then you can save that PDF in Evernote or OneNote or Google Keep, wherever you keep that kind of reference information. Now, the action happens in Remember the Milk, and when it's done, it moves to reference. Now, this approach of emailing into Remember the Milk, it also works with things like Asana or Todoist or TickTick, any of those major task apps. The specific symbols for due dates or priorities may differ, but the concept is the same. You'll have an email address, put that in your contacts, forward the email to that particular email address, and it winds up in your task list of choice. Now, Remember the Milk offers a special Gmail add-on. And with this installed, you can add emails to your task list and maintain links to the original email. Even if you delete the email, you'll still have access to it for 30 days before it's permanently moved to the trash. You just click on that little add-on over in the side of your, as you're looking at the email, you'll see a little icon over toward the right, a little cow's head. Click it, a little window opens up where as you go from one email to the other, the subject line is automatically filled in for you. You can just simply change it to something else, add your priority, add all that other information right there on the side. Click it, and it's automatically saved as a task. And then you just move on. I open it, I go through the entire list, get the inbox back to zero. Now, modern digital note taking has sort of blurred the lines between action and reference. In the early 2000s, I recommended creating a task in Outlook if you were going into a meeting or you wanted to take notes during a phone call. You just opened a new task, and then in the notes section of that task, go ahead and take your notes. And then before you save it, just put something in the subject of that task that might just say, dissect these notes from the so and so phone call. So now you can forget about it. It's in your task list. And as you're working through the task list, you come across a task that's telling you to dissect the notes. You go through and you pick out what the to-dos are and you put them on your task list. You picked out the calendar events, you put them on the calendar. And then whatever was left over that you needed to save as good reference information, well, just drag the task over to that note section. So, easy to do. Now, today's superior note apps like Evernote or Notion or Google Keep or OneNote, they excel in trapping information. So now I would be, if I'm on that important phone call or I'm taking notes in a meeting, I've got Evernote open. Just, create a new note. But now it's sort of like, well, aren't we in the reference part of this thing first? So here's the way I get around that. First of all, I have a notebook in Evernote called Inbox. In fact, the way I've named it is to actually put a dot up front. It's actually called dot inbox, which sorts that notebook to the top of the list. I treat that notebook as really an extension of my task list. Where am I going to find the things that need my attention? Well, they're either in my task list or they're sitting there in that inbox of Remember the Milk. So as part of my day, I'm getting that Evernote inbox back to empty. So any notes that are in there, that's my prompt to dissect those notes. But what if you have a note that's already created and it already lives in another notebook? Let me give you an example. Let's say you're a member of a committee that meets a few times a year and you want to keep the notes from all of those meetings within the same note and just give each one the appropriate date. But that you've got all of those meetings for the whole year. Maybe there are only a few of them, but you want to keep it there in one note. So you pull that note up and you continue taking your notes for this current meeting. Well, there are going to be to-dos in there. There are going to be calendar events in there. How do you keep those from falling through the cracks? There's a service that I've used since 2013 called Task Clone. All I have to do when I put something in a note in Evernote, and I realize that it is a task or it is a calendar event, I just put a little box, just a little check box in front of it. Task Clone automatically looks for those little check boxes and puts that information on Remember the Milk for tasks and for Google Calendar for calendar events. So I never have to worry about any of that falling through the cracks. And if it's a task, it's going to also include automatically in the notes section of that task a little link that takes me back to the original note over in Evernote. So there's my task, and there's the reference information in the notes section, including a link back to the full note over in Evernote. Works like a charm. I did an entire video on Task Clone. I'm going to include the link in the body of the blog post. I also did an interview with the founder, Troy Christmas. I'm including that link for you also. Finally, this principle of treating things as action first and then moving to reference also applies to physical paper. I go out to the mailbox, I empty it all. Some of it's going to be action information, some of it a bill to pay, a letter I received and I need to write that person back, for example. Other things that it's a bill that's already been paid electronically. I just need to file it. A catalog I might just want to simply file, or things that are going to wind up in the trash can after being read. I treat it first as action information. It all goes in the physical inbox that's sitting here on my desk. And then just go through it, handle everything one time, decide the action that needs to happen, do that action, schedule that action for another day by putting it in the tickler file. Things that are reference information, file it away. Things that were action, and now I've handled the action, but I want to save the paper, now become reference, put it in my filing cabinet in the appropriate folder, and I'm done with it. So when new information arrives, whether it's digital or physical, the focus is on making a little decision on what it means to you and what action is required. Treat it first as action. When the action is complete, move it to reference. Using the action first principle, you never find yourself stuck with papers filed away too soon and the action has been embedded in those papers in the filing cabinet and it falls through the cracks. You never lose to-dos in a digital email inbox again. Everything's treated as action first. When the action's completed, it moves to reference. I hope this helps you in your workflow, both in the physical paper world and the digital world. Thanks so much for stopping by today. This has been Frank Buck, helping you get organized and make it look easy.